Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated, but there is a better, simpler way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to live events. With SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There's nothing quite like seeing your favorite team or musician in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone, and it's by far the easiest way I've found to shop for tickets. I could be anywhere, and with just a few taps, I can instantly find seats. I actually used SeatGeek to buy tickets to go see the Marlins and experience the whole thing. It was fantastic. SeatGeek is designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever. SeatGeek saves you time and money by searching multiple ticket sites to compare prices and find amazing deals. Plus, every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets on SeatGeek with confidence. Best of all, my listeners get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code Bomani today. That's promo code BOMANI for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase.
Hey, I'm Jack, host of the new comedic news and pop culture podcast, The Daily Zeitgeist from How Stuff Works. A little bit about me. I've listened to almost every episode of Stuff You Should Know and Stuff You Missed in History Class. I'm the co-founder and was the editor-in-chief of Cracked for the last 11 years. And our show is basically the day's news and pop culture filtered through a brain that contains all the information that entails.
And I'm Miles Gray, Jack's co-host, a former political operative and pop culture addict, like something I actually take medication for.
He does. And sometimes he's a bunch of different people, like Michael McDonald.
Tell him he's a stranger.
Japanese radio DJ.
皆さんおはようございます。マイルスです。
And Making a Murderer's Brendan Dassey.
Yeah. No.
Just a fair warning, guys, you're going to learn a lot, but some of the content can get a little edgy, so not for young ears, but trust us, it's all in good fun. So go to Apple Podcasts and listen and subscribe to The Daily Zeitgeist. It's really good, is our catchphrase. We're still working on it.
Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
We had a feeling this would happen. There is no terrible surprise to the fact that Jimbo Fisher has taken the job at Texas A&M. I do think there is a little bit of surprise for some people that Jimbo Fisher took the job at Texas A&M, although I have to say that Jimbo going to Texas A&M allowed us to really get cracking on things that are very entertaining about coaching searches that I felt like we really hadn't indulged in thus far about these coaching searches. And what would those things be? One, the flight tracker. I hadn't looked at the flight tracker in quite a while. Somebody had the flight tracker going from College Station to Tallahassee in order to pick Jimbo up. And the people who know planes apparently were saying that they could have sent him a nicer plane. That apparently the booster with the nice plane wasn't there. But anyway, they sent the plane to go get Jimbo. And then the other thing is just kind of stalking out somebody's house to see what kind of stuff they're doing. And we all knew that Jimbo was out of there when people saw his Christmas tree on the curb. Did you see that? Yeah, his Christmas tree was on the curb. They threw the Christmas tree out, presumably because they were leaving. And my question about that is, damn, why'd y'all even buy the Christmas tree? Now, come on, homie, you knew you was about to be up out of there. Why'd y'all even waste time buying the Christmas tree if all you was going to do was throw that bad boy out? Anyway, Jimbo Fisher, 10-year contract, 10-year contract. Say that one more time for the people in the cheap seats. 10-year contract, average salary, $7.5 million for Jimbo at Texas A&M. So, we now have 2 jobs in America that require you to win a national championship as the head coach. One of them is Alabama. You realize this about Alabama, right? That there are basically 2 kinds of coaches at Alabama. Head coaches who won national championships there and head coaches who were fired very quickly. Or you have Dennis Franchione who looked around and was like, man, bump this, and then he went, ironically, to Texas A&M. Not really ironically, but that's how you be using the word ironically. Anyway, the other person that has to win a national championship now, like at some point fast, is Jimbo Fisher. Like, it's on you. You got to do this. Ain't nobody paying you no $7.5 million to try hard. Ain't nobody paying you no $7.5 million to get the GPA up. Ain't nobody paying you no $7.5 million just to see what you can pull off down there. Somebody talked to the president of Texas A&M yesterday, and they asked him what his expectations were, what he wanted from a head coach, and he said, deadpan, just win a national championship. Guys, do you know the last time Texas A&M won a national championship? 1939. That would be the last time they won a national championship. 1939. And now the expectation is that you go win one. Look, $7.5 million. That's the only way anybody's giving you that kind of bread is if you are expected to come in here and win a national championship at a place where, one, they haven't won the conference since 1998. They have not won a division since 2010. And to be honest with you, I completely forgot that they won that division. That's a byproduct of Texas being terrible that year, by the way. Which, by the way, gets us to one of the more interesting points about Texas A&M that's going to make this a little difficult for Jimbo. There appears to be one factor in the history of Texas A&M that is required for them to be really, really good, and that is for Texas to be bad. If Texas is not good, then Texas A&M can kind of pick this thing up. Now, over the course of these last few years, Texas has not been good, and Texas A&M still, outside of that magical 2012 season, hasn't really been able to pull anything off. But that's what this is at this job. You have a job that is basically an 8-win job. Right? Up and down, look at it historically. A&M is an 8-win job. I think there are a lot of places that wishes they could be 8-win jobs, but if you're going to be real about it, during the Sumlin era, they were basically no different than Mississippi State. Like, go look at that year in, year out. You get mixed up which Maroon team was the best one in the conference during that stretch of time. Anyway, this is by and large an 8-win job that now suddenly has put out the bread that is going to allow everyone around that program to demand a national championship of Jimbo Fisher. Now, you're probably saying out there, well, every school wants to win a national championship. Yeah, every school wants to win a national championship, but most of them understand you ain't going to win one every year, right? You're going to get to the playoff here and there. Maybe you win a division championship, whatever it is, right? Like, those are the kinds of things that you got to hoping for out of a job in such a place. No, $7.5 million for the head coach. A head coach, by the way, who has already won a national championship. They are going to want a national championship, and they are not going to be shy about it. And since they got to the SEC, it should be noted, A&M has yet to beat LSU. A&M has that one win over Alabama. Now, there's a long way to go to catch up on this. Now, let me ask you this question. Regardless of how good a coach you think Jimbo Fisher is, just in absolute terms, how much better of a coach do you think Jimbo Fisher is than Kevin Sumlin? Now, I don't love Kevin Sumlin. I also don't love Jimbo Fisher in that way. But I don't love Sumlin as a coach, but Sumlin's a good one. He's not a great coach necessarily, but he's a good one. And they went from the Big 12 and consistently won 8 games in the SEC, which I have to tell you, I wasn't absolutely sure they could do. Sumlin managed to recruit well, but you got to be creative recruiting at A&M, because I know a lot of you guys, when you think about how great the A&M job is, you'll point to the fact that it has facilities, you'll point to the fact that they have money, and you'll point to the fact that it is in Texas. I feel like the people who point to the fact that Texas A&M are in Texas are lazy. Why do I say they're lazy? Let's think of some other schools that are in Texas. Texas El Paso. It's in Texas. You think they can recruit there? No, they can't really recruit in Texas El Paso. In that case, it's because it's in El Paso. Now, El Paso is a different animal than the rest of Texas, far, far, far west. No lie, I'll never forget this as long as I live, man. When we moved to Houston, we drove in from Atlanta. We come across the state line at I-10. You come across, and there's a sign that says Orange, which is one of the towns right by the line. I forget how many miles you have to go before you get to Orange. And then under it says El Paso, 857 miles. Right? It's a big state. It's a lot of different things going on in Texas. And I'm just telling you right now, of those lots of things going on, ain't a lot of them going on in College Station. It's not. And I don't mean to make the College Station people defensive about this. I really, really don't, because I'm not trying to rag on your town. I'm just telling you, if you are from College Station and you like College Station, that is great for you. But whose sensibilities do you think are more in line with the average college recruit, shall we say? Do you think they are yours, or do you think they are mine? Do you think it is more important that College Station is a place that you would want to go, or do you think it's more important that College Station is a place that I would want to go? Oh, yeah, there we go. We together. We on the same page. We there. That's the holdup. That Jimbo Fisher can't really do anything about that. Now, what I want to see from this, number one, we know the contract's 10 years, $75 million. I haven't seen anything about what the buyout is. I'm fascinated to see what the buyout is. The other thing that I want to see in this is how much of that want to Texas A&M is about to put on the road for this. Because if you put $7.5 million on a coach, I feel like want to has to be applied at that point. I do. I feel like want to has really got to be applied. But let me ask this question of you, Texas A&M fans. Serious question about Jimbo. If you look at what Jimbo Fisher did at Florida State outside of the stretch of time between 2012 and 2014, I think it's too easy for people to say what Jimbo's record was with Jameis and then put everything else together. They won the ACC and they won the Orange Bowl the year before Jameis started, and that was with E.J. Manuel at quarterback. And I don't know if you've ever seen E.J. Manuel at quarterback, but he wasn't no Jameis Winston. They won a lot at that point, but they still found a way to lose that game to NC State and to a Florida team that had no offense. But that's neither here nor there. Jimbo's stretch at Florida State has been that run in the middle. Now, if he manages to put one of those runs together at Texas A&M, he can quit after that. Like, they'll be happy to have that run. You don't believe me? You know the reason why they love Johnny Manziel so much at Texas A&M? Because they've been waiting their whole lives for something like that. In between John David Crow and Johnny Manziel, they were just sitting around waiting their whole lives for that sort of thing to happen. They were. So if Jimbo could get one of those runs, they'll be thrilled with it. But the demand here is a national championship, and I can't blame anybody around that program if they demand a national championship out of Jimbo Fisher after all the money they're paying him. The only problem is they haven't won a national championship since 1939, and nothing really has changed. This isn't like Florida, which had never won the SEC before Steve Spurrier. A lot of things happened in the state of Florida. It's not even like Florida State, where a lot of things happened at Florida State, like they were at all-women's college until the 40s, and then they hired Bobby Bowden. But like Miami, all those Florida schools, there was a population boom that took place at that time in Florida. And on top of that, there's a little thing called integration. It's a really big deal. Kind of changed the landscape of a whole lot of things. The only thing that's really changed for Texas A&M is that they went to the SEC. I don't think that's really the structural change that people are talking about that's really going to make things happen. So they can pump all that money into the program that they want to. They still going to be in College Station. And that is not a plus in your recruiting. It's just not. I don't make the rules, man, but that's not a plus in your recruiting. And the question is going to be, how many players are you able to get in there? And then once those players are there, the tie-breaking factor is, can you get the most out of them? Jimbo Fisher built a machine for 2013 that was as talented as any college football team has ever been. It's legitimately up there with that 2001 Miami team in terms of raw talent that he had on the team in 2013. He had that. I don't think you can put that kind of machine together at Texas A&M. It is that kind of machine that was required for Florida State to win a national championship with Jimbo. Keep it in mind that they almost found a way to lose that game. Can you put that? Just because you can get it done at Florida State doesn't tell me anything about what it is that you can do at Texas A&M. And now with this salary and everything else, you ratcheted up the expectations, honestly and truly, to Alabama levels. Because Alabama's the only place that demands national championships at the rate that I think that Texas A&M is going to demand them now that they pay $7.5 million. They've been waiting their whole lives for something like this, Jimbo. You damn well better be what they dreamed of.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
We talk about that thing with Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M and him going and everything else. And somebody just made a point here. I want to make sure I read it properly. I don't know if he even posted this like with one of the Twitter names that I can. Oh, yeah, this guy William. He says, regarding recruiting, yes, College Station is tough to recruit to, but how delightful is Tuscaloosa as a vacation destination? It's who's doing the recruiting that matters. Actually, something very interesting about that statement, and this is something that gets lost in the discussion about the SEC. The SEC is southern, but the SEC doesn't have a lot of poor destinations. Like, there aren't a lot of places in the SEC where people mention what they are, and people are like, I don't know about that one. The only ones that I can really think of that make people scrunch their faces up in the SEC are Starkville and College Station. That's it. You go through the rest of the conference, there really aren't that many destinations. And it's kind of one of the underrated things about the conference. Like, not even Auburn's and Opelika, not even that one, right? I mean, as far as, like, places people ultimately want to wind up in that conference, College Station isn't very high. Sorry, man. I don't make the rules. All right, 888-729-3776. That's our telephone number. So the Tennessee thing, it can't. Every time you think it stops, right? I'm getting ready to leave the house to come in there to work today, and I see that Big Phil Fulmer, is being named the athletic director. This is after yesterday our old friend Brett McMurphy was reporting that the belief was that they were trying to get Mike Leach through. John Curry thought he had worked out a deal with Mike Leach to be the head coach, and that behind the scenes, Phil Fulmer was trying to slow up that hire so that he ultimately could become the athletic director. What do you know? Today, Philip Fulmer signs a 2-year contract to be the athletic director. And, oh, by the way, if you are signing your athletic director to a 2-year contract, you're not making it any easier to find a coach. Because if you then get another athletic director at the end of the 2 years, guess what he's going to want to do? He's going to want to hire his own coach. Now, the only way that this argument makes any sense for them to put Fulmer in this position is Jimmy has him out here playing Geppetto, puppet strings, right? That's the only way that it makes some sense, is that Jimmy has him saying, look, Phil Fulmer is my hire, and the next guy that's the athletic director will then ultimately be my hire. What I think did John Curry, the former athletic director, in this case was he went out here and independently found himself a coach to hire. that means that booster class doesn't have power over what it is. And that booster class apparently got together and was like, yo, we got to get this clown up out of here. What took you so long? I talked to somebody who made a very, very, very good point about this. In everything that has happened with Tennessee, you can make the argument that hiring Mike Leach was the one good idea that they had. And that's the one that got the dude fired. And that's how ridiculous this search has gotten. Would you like some more information on how ridiculous that search has gotten? This is from SBNation.com. Shannon, here's the headline. Tennessee's coaching search has already cost more than $13 million, plus a potential Greg Schiano lawsuit, and the Vols don't even have a head coach yet.
Wait, what?
Okay.
Wait, how much was that again?
$13 million. We got $5.5 million to buy out the athletic director. That's how, wow, who knew being an athletic director paid like that, right? $5.5 million left to pay out as an athletic director. Shannon, athletic director made 100 G's a month.
And didn't last a year.
100 G's a month, getting a buyout. Didn't last a year. Didn't last 9 months. 100 G's a month. Then the buyout for Butch Davis was $8.3 million. So that's $13 million right there. We're not even talking about all these private planes and all the embarrassment and everything else. They spent $13 million so far to not have a coach. To not have a coach. That's where they are. And Philip Fulmer, now some of you may remember this, some of you may not. For you younger folks, Philip Fulmer was a longtime assistant at Tennessee. During the 1992 season, I believe it was. Yeah, I think it was the 1993. Either way it goes. Johnny Majors was the head coach, and Johnny Majors had a heart attack. He had to miss a few games. After those few games were done, Johnny Majors got fired, and Phil Fulmer, who had been the interim coach, wound up with the job. Johnny Majors has told anybody who would listen over that time that Phil Fulmer muscled him out of his job. It's also noted, by the way, that in the time that Johnny Majors coached that year, they were 5-3 and 3-3 in the SEC. Like, there's a lot that goes on with that. But Johnny Majors has been adamant that Phil Fulmer muscled him off that job. And anytime somebody asked Johnny Majors any questions about what was going on at Tennessee, he was giving credit to anybody other than Phil Fulmer. This was the Johnny Majors lie, Shannon. You know, John Chavis is the reason why he still has a job, right? John Chavis is the defensive coordinator.
I can only imagine.
Right? Like, that's what it was with Johnny Majors. So Phil, the word was that Phil strong-armed him. But then after that, Phil did a bunch of winning, so I don't feel like anybody actually cared about that one. But now we got the word that Phil Fulmer appeared to have muscled this athletic director out of place, which isn't going to cause him any problems with, like, the Tennessee faithful, because they wanted the athletic director out of there anyway. That being said, Shannon, the more I look at this, I'm looking at Phil Fulmer like that friend of your daddy's. Well, I've never experienced this personally, but I hear people tell that story where you hear ding-dong on the door, and then you go to the front door, and you're like, hi, Mr. Fulmer, my dad's not home. That's not who I'm coming to see. I mean, he stayed muscling people out of gigs. Wasn't he the one that they thought snitched to the NCAA, and he didn't show up to the SEC meetings that year because they were trying to hit him with the subpoena when he walked in the door? Also, Phil Fulmer reminds me a lot of, what's your man's name? Law and Order. The Senator, Fred Thompson. You remember? You see it, don't you?
John, I'll look this up, but wasn't Thompson from Tennessee as well?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. In fact, is Fred Thompson still alive, living as Phil Fulmer, and we just have no idea? I mean, I watch Law and Order. This seems like the sort of thing that man would have done. It's not him. Yeah, you know why it's not him? Because Fred Thompson's a little taller, a little more of the lanky type. Phil Fulmer is an old offensive lineman. He straight muscled that dude out of there. And, by the way, got himself back in there because people wanted Fulmer to be the athletic director when Curry got this job in 2017. And then Curry wound up giving Fulmer like a $100,000 a year job, some ceremonial thing to try to appease those fans who wanted Fulmer there. And little did John Curry know, Fulmer was like, cool. Fulmer's like, I'm back in the house, back in the game. Just sitting there plotting. That's all this was plotting. He's like, look, we're going to get this coaching search going. I'm going to make it as hard as possible. Then I'm going to get that. Just you watch. I'm going to get that.
As bad as we heard this go for Curry, though, having this information with Fulmer trying to muscle him out, isn't that actually a good thing for Curry if he's trying to get another AD job?
So you have an excuse?
It's a built-in excuse, isn't it? Is it not?
He does have a built-in excuse. You are right. That is the story that he can tell. He has got his built-in excuse. Meanwhile, Philip Fulmer somewhere looking like Mr. Burns with his fingers coming together, right? Like hitting his fingers together at the top of the point. excellent.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Our guest join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Thanks to Mark Schleybaugh of ESPN for joining us last segment. On the line with us now, check him out at AM 640 in Toronto and the Fantasy Sports Network. Joins us every week with his NFL picks. His name is Cam Stewart. All right, Cam, you had 500 for the season, 22-22. Let's get into your picks. You got your bronze medal game, the Patriots and the Bills. Patriots 9-point favorites on the road. Which way are you going?
There's a fire in Lackawanna, Cheektowaga, and nobody circles the wagons like the Bills. Bomani, I'm going with Buffalo. Give me the 9 points. I'll tell you something, it's going to be awesome. They got to get to Brady early. Lots of pressure, lots of sacks, maybe force a turnover and keep that crowd in the game. But Buffalo, I love the performance against Kansas City. New England, they just keep on rolling. But this is a big, big spot for the Bills with easy games down the stretch. I think they can keep it close. I think if Patriots win, it's going to be on like a last-second magical Tom Brady drive. But I'm going to take Buffalo Bill +9 in a tight game.
Cam, you're right down the road, man. You got to go make that trip to sit outside in the cold in Buffalo.
I have, Bomani. I've made that trip. I usually go to a couple games every year. This year I haven't been able to make it. I was actually at the CFL semifinal, and the Argos won the Grey Cup, bringing them some good luck. But I will be making the trip. Hopefully, if the Bills can squeak into a playoff game, we might go down to QEW for that one.
All right, it's Cam Stewart with his NFL picks. All right, your silver game, Rams and Cardinals. Cardinals 7-point underdogs at home. You found a home dog again?
Yeah, I'm going with the home dog, and I love what the Rams are doing. I got to give them a lot of credit. McVay and that team has been fantastic. Goff has really grown. Todd Gurley, he's doing what he did in Georgia. But this is a big revenge spot for the Cards, and I got to admit, Blaine Gabbert's been playing pretty good. These guys were embarrassed by London by the Rams, and Gabbert, he's actually been playing a lot better. These guys, the Arizona Cardinals, held the Jags to a season-low 219 of offense. Their defense is playing a little bit better. The offense is actually starting to click. 7 points seems like a few too many points. I can see a real tight one. Cheap. Give me the Cardinals, Bomani, plus a touchdown.
All right, on to Cam Stewart, AM 640 here. All right, your goal pick. We got the Eagles and the Seahawks. The Eagles are 5.5-point favorites on the road. I'm sensing a trend here.
Yeah, I am sensing a trend, too. I'll tell you something. This was really tough for me because Carson Wentz right now in MVP talks, and if he goes into the land of the 12th man and gets it done, I got to give him a lot of credit. Philadelphia's been covering all year long, but now you're giving me the Seattle Seahawks as +5.5 at home. Pete Carroll, a monster in December, 21-9 straight up, 21-8-1 ATS in this month. They love playing the NFC East, too, 3-0 against the spread there. Philadelphia has been awesome, Bomani, but they beat up on some lesser lights. If Seattle brings that Russell Wilson magic and the 12th man, I could see a real tight game, even Seattle winning outright. I got to take the 5.5, but let's give credit to the Eagles. But I'm going with the Seahawks over the Eagles in the Battle of the Birds.
All right, we are talking to Cam Stewart, AM 640 in Toronto and the Fantasy Sports Network. All right, we got a couple other games for you, though. Vikings and Falcons. Which way are you going there?
Yeah, you know what? I'm actually going to go with the Falcons in this game, Bomani. I'm hoping to get 2.5. Right now, the line's staying at 3. If I bet, I'm probably taking the money line, but I really like what Atlanta's doing. Hey, let's give Minnesota a lot of credit. These guys have been making people money all season long, but I like Atlanta in this spot. They're playing good football. They are at home. They're going to get it done, Bomani. I got to take the Falcons to beat the Vikes.
You're not trusting Case Keenum. You're rolling the dice on that one a few too many times.
He's rolling. I'll tell you, the Vikings have been good to me. I got some futures on these guys just this week. I like what Atlanta's doing. They smell a big divisional battle in the NFC South. They know they got to keep on winning. Give me the Falcons.
All right, now we got Broncos and Dolphins. This was an even money game coming off the to start the week. Which way you going there?
Yeah, I'm going with Denver. Actually, I kind of like the situation because Denver's backed into a better quarterback. Paxton Lynch is not ready to play, Bomani, but I will tell you this. Trevor Siemian in that game against the Raiders when they were down 21-0, he came in. They only lost 21-14. I still see some fight in Denver. I have no faith in Gase, Cutler, and the Dolphins. This game's basically a pick 'em. Give me the Denver Broncos to get it done in Miami.
All right, talk to Cam Stewart, AM 640 in Toronto with his NFL picks. You got anything going for the college football weekend?
I sure do, Bomani. It's going to be a great game tonight between Stanford and USC. I think it could be really close, but the games I like, Auburn and Georgia rematch. I'm telling you something. I could see defense at a premium here. 48.5 is very low for a college total, but the Tigers and Bulldogs, this is going to be a classic game. I could see like a 19-17 type of game, scratching, clawing. I'm going to take the under, keep digging, Auburn and Georgia, 48.5. And I got to go with the Badgers. The Badgers getting 6.5 against Ohio State. Wisconsin disrespected all season long. A very, very tight defense. They could do enough on offense, and I'll tell you one thing they'll do, Bomani. They will pound the rock against Ohio State. I see a tight game, maybe Wisconsin winning outright. The Dogs in the Big Ten championship game have always done well. Sign me up with the Wisconsin Badgers plus 6.5.
Hey, man, I got to ask you this, man. Since you said you went to those Grey Cup semis, like, what's the environment at a Grey Cup playoff game?
It's absolutely insane, Bomani. You know what it is, though? There's a lot of people there and a lot of drinking, but you know what it is? Compared to an NFL game, it's kind of stupid to say this, Canadian, it's friendlier. Like, Saskatchewan fan was hanging with Argo fan, and they're taking pictures and stuff. Like, I've been to a Bills game wearing a Joey Galloway Seahawks jacket, and they're throwing old beers at me, mustard packets. Like, I walked out of there, and my jersey was absolutely ruined, and they're like, hey, Bunny, man, Seahawks suck. Like, you get a lot of that in Buffalo, even though the Seahawks aren't even a rival of the Bills. So I'm just going to say, Bomani, less people, more friendly, but great football action. The Grey Cup was a classic this year. Fantastic stuff. Argos over Stampeders.
All right, that is my man Cam Stewart. Check him out here every Friday with his NFL picks. That 500, man, I think you can get off that. You think we got to get you off the basic, man. Make the people winners.
You said it, buddy. Ups and downs this year, but hope everyone hits some winners this week. Good luck with the picks, Bomani, and I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, man. You take it easy. All right, 888-729-3776. That's our telephone number. Subscribe right now to 30 for 30 Podcast in the Listen tab of the ESPN app or Apple Podcast, brought to you by Blue Apron. Get $30 off your first meal with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/30 for 30. Also, shout out to Cam. He was at the grocery store when he was doing that hit. We appreciate that. We greatly appreciate that.
Could you imagine walking in the grocery store and hearing that Cam Stewart conversation while in the grocery store?
Well, once he does the horse noise, I think that's the part where if you're just a grocery store consumer and you hear this, you've got to be wondering what exactly is going on, right? Like at that moment, you're like, who in the world is he talking to?
I can also imagine that Cam's probably a couponer, too. Just imagine how excited he gets when he finds the great deals.
I'll tell you this, I do radio interviews like in cabs and in stores and stuff like that. And one time somebody was like, wow, I heard the way you were talking. You ought to be on the radio. And I'm like, yeah, let me keep this moving before you mess around recognize me.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I've never felt more alive.
Disclaimer. Geico cannot guarantee you will feel more alive. You either possess functioning respiratory and circulatory systems, or you do not, or you are a zombie. If you are indeed a brain-starved zombie and you would like to save money on car insurance, the Geico legal team applaud your excellent life choices, even in your shambling afterlife. But we strongly encourage you to visit geico.com or download the Geico app. Please stay a minimum of 500 feet away from our large and presumably delicious, delicious brains.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
All right, so Tennessee made Phil Fulmer the athletic director today because they don't know what in the hell they are doing. They did finally get wise to the fact that they were probably going to have to fire their athletic director, and they had to fire the athletic director because pretty much everybody knew the athletic director was ultimately going to get fired, and it becomes very difficult for you to hire a head coach if your athletic director is going to be fired. Then there is Phil Fulmer, as I described him before. Phil Fulmer's the dude that comes over, your dad's friend that comes to the house. You're like, hi, Mr. Fulmer, my dad's not home. And he's like, it's not who I came to see, little fella. Go tell your mom I'm here. Look, man, he muscles his way into whatever it is that needs to be muscled into. He got himself this athletic director job. He parlayed some little ceremonial position, kept himself at the right place, talked to the right folks, created enough hassles. Now John Curry is out of there. And this is Beverly Davenport, a.k.a. White Beverly, explaining what's going on here.
This morning I decided to make a change in leadership in our athletics department. It's a decision I feel that was in the best interest of our university. John Curry has been suspended, and Philip Fulmer has agreed to step in as our athletic director. I want you to know John Curry has worked tirelessly in his position, and I greatly respect him for his commitment and his contributions to the University of Tennessee. Several weeks ago, I asked him to lead a search for our next football coach. He was given full authority to find the best coach for Tennessee. But we are here today to begin a new era and a new opportunity to move the University of Tennessee forward. I asked Philip if he would lead our athletic department for the foreseeable future, and I asked him to take the reins of our search for the next head football coach.
Look here. If it's a new era, you don't get a man a 2-year contract. A new era comes in more than a 2-year contract. They're like, look, we had to get this dude up out of here. We got somebody here to be in place, but, things are getting bad. We had to get this dude up out of here. Now, what it sounds like was the last straw for John Curry, though. He flew out to interview Mike Leach for the head coaching position, and we had gotten the word, like, not just yesterday, but I was hearing it this morning. It looked like Mike Leach was going to be the guy to get the job. And Leach keeps winding up coaching these teams in these far-off locales, but he wants to coach in the light. He wants to coach somewhere where he can get some shine. I don't know how it works for him in a place where he can get some shine, but Mike Leach has won 10 games at Texas Tech and had a 9-win season this year that could end in 10 at Washington State. Those are not easy places for you to win. You kind of got to figure this out one way or another, and he managed to. And look, it's one thing to pull this off while you're at Texas Tech because Texas at least has so many players that you can get, you can figure it out at Texas Tech. Wazoo, no. They're not producing players anywhere near there to figure out how to win there. Look, they beat USC this year. They beat Oregon this year. I mean, they figured this out and how to get it done. He wants to go to the light. Now he got to go right back there. But this is what it sounds like to me. You let me know if I'm tripping. But it sounds like Curry went and decided, okay, if I'm going to have to get this done, I got to do this myself. So he went out and got a guy that he thought would work as the head coach. And then he came and he brought that back to the money. And the money was like, what in the hell are you talking about? And then once that happens, you have to go. Like this is the second time they tried to hire somebody. Look, and it did not work. It could not even get it through. There's no way for them to get that bad boy through. So we lost the fun, Shannon, to Mike Leach SEC press conferences. And I do you know how that was going to play with an SEC school? Because I feel like we media guys enjoy it a great deal, but I don't know how that was going to play with the fans.
That would have been a win every week with his weekly presser. Come on now. I would have loved that. I'm not even talking about the on-the-field stuff with Leach and his offense going against these SEC defenses. I want the weekly Mike Leach SEC press conference. Come on.
But here's the question. How many of those press conferences will we actually get? Because you can get away with having those press conferences when you're like 5-7 when you at Wazoo. I don't think you can get away with those kind of press conferences when you're 9-3 at Tennessee. Right? You could be 10-2. I don't know if you can get away with those press conferences. Like, I feel like that whole thing tires in a place where the stakes are much higher. Like Texas Tech, for example. Who was before Mike Leach got there? I think Mike Leach got the job. Spike Dykes was the guy who had the job before him. Spike Dykes had been there forever. Spike Dykes was a legendary sort of figure at Texas Tech. Spike Dykes had all of 2 seasons at Texas Tech where he won 9 games. They had 2 seasons at Texas Tech where they finished in the top 20 or top 25, whatever the poll happened to be then. That's all it was. They had 2. Mike Leach, he shows up there. He's like new damn Rodney for them when he gets there. I'm not sure how that would have played in a different place, but I'm right there with Shannon. I would have loved to have watched how it would have played in that different place. Problem is, man, I don't get the feeling that Mike Leach understands, like, there's some things you don't say out loud. Like, he get around there and tell the wrong joke in front of the wrong people, then all of a sudden we got some issues. But that's him. And now he's not going to be there. So who is ultimately going to be the one to take this job, and how much money is it going to take to get insert person here to take that job? Because as we talked about this before, SB Nation made a great point. As of now, in the name of trying to find a head coach, Tennessee has spent $13 million. They paid $8.3 million to get Butch Jones out of his contract. They paid a boatload of cash, over $5 million to get John Curry out of his contract. They still don't have a coach. Also, by the way, $8.3 million for Butch Jones to no longer coach them. $5-something million for John Curry to no longer be the athletic director. Shannon, I thought they said they couldn't find no money to pay the players. You remember that?
Funny how somehow, some way, they always find a way to come up. They got, you know what? It's in their sofas, Bo. It's between the cushions. That's exactly where it is.
That's what it is. Yeah, everybody says they don't have the money to find the players. They have had all the money for this farce that they have engaged in, and in order to get this done, they're probably going to have to back up the truck. Like, remember, they got caught in that situation when Lane Kiffin left in 2010. They got the low budget hire. They went and got what's it? Great value? Is that what they call it? They went and got the great value hire. They went and got Derek Dooley, and that's the mistake that is damn Tennessee. Lane Kiffin wasn't so much of a mistake except I don't think they ever considered that Pete Carroll would leave so quickly and Lane Kiffin would be the guy that they ultimately brought on to take that job. That was the math I didn't think they accounted for. But if Lane Kiffin had stayed at Tennessee for a while, he could have gotten some things going. He recruited well while he was there, and he pulled off some things that he was there winning-wise that I think some games that they did not expect to win. Kept it close against Florida, although I think his whole plan again that game was just to cover the spread. But anyway, Dooley was the hire that messed everything up. As I said on this show before, Dooley once had one full recruiting class that did not have an offensive lineman. Dead up, a full recruiting class that didn't have an offensive lineman. They can't get to the point in this where whoever the hire is a settle hire. They can't get to a point where they do what they did with Dooley, where they hire somebody for that job that no one else would have hired for a job of a similar caliber. They're going to have to go hard to try to get whoever it is. So we had Mark Schlabach on a little earlier, and Mark said that it looks like it's coming down to it at Florida State with Willie Taggart and Justin Fuente. Justin Fuente is now the coach at Virginia Tech. If Justin Fuente is still available, Shannon, what's taking Tennessee so long to back up the truck and try to get him?
I'm surprised his name hasn't come up in the Tennessee job.
How much does it cost now? How much would it cost? If you wanted to get Fuente right now, how much does it cost? I feel like it's going to cost them $6 million to get a coach, right?
And to your point you made earlier in the segment, any coach they get now, whatever that number was initially going to be, it's raised considerably now. Whatever the amount is going to be, you're going to have to pay. I'm not going to say double, but you're going to have to add a lot to it now.
Yes, and there's also the interesting bit of drama, which is there any set of circumstances where they wind up so far down their list that they then have to go call T. Martin? Now, I am very careful in what I say about T. Martin and his candidacy because there are macro-level issues in the game of college hiring, right? College coach hiring, there are macro-level issues where it's easy to draw some conclusions, to jump to some conclusions as it relates to T. Martin. I don't know enough about him and his readiness or what people in his business think of him to say that he should be the head coach at Tennessee. I cannot say that. However, how embarrassing would it be if they waited so long to offer T. Martin that he finally said, no, I ain't trying to be there? Because the farther down they go on the list, you're getting a guy that people are not necessarily going to be happy with. The other question, and I've heard people broach this, we had Bruce Feldman on yesterday, and Bruce Feldman mentioned this, which is, what is the role that Peyton Manning has in this search specifically as it relates to T. Martin? Right, because as much as everybody loves Peyton Manning, well, a lot of y'all love Peyton Manning that way. Anyway, as big a name as Peyton Manning happens to be, he is the man at Tennessee, right? He is a particular legend at Tennessee. Except he never won the championship. He did not. They finally never beat Florida. They finally got an SEC championship, but he never won a national championship. They wound up in the Fiesta Bowl, I believe that was in 1997, and they got their doors, the Orange Bowl. It was the Orange Bowl. They got the doors blown off when they finally got there. They got their doors absolutely blown off. Next year, Tennessee finally does beat Florida. They finally get that undefeated season. They finally do win a national championship. And so people have raised the question as to whether or not Peyton Manning might be uncomfortable with the idea that the guy who did the things that he was not able to do, and of course it was, don't know one person do anything, but the quarterback is typically the face of these things, and the guy that got done what Peyton Manning didn't get done, is Peyton Manning willing to have that guy also come in, be the head coach, and maybe get this thing right, which then might cut a little bit into Peyton Manning's shine? That is a question that people have asked. I would love to get to the bottom of that.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Our guest joined us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, just like our next guest. He covers Florida State athletics at the Tallahassee Democrat. His name is Corey Clark. So, Corey, did you know it was real that Jimbo Fisher was gone when you saw the Christmas tree on his curb?
That was the final straw, right? My man's not going to even be here for Christmas, just throwing it out willy-nilly in the yard. Yeah, that was a pretty good indication, I guess, that maybe he wasn't planning on being in that house in December.
The way that works, though, I remember when LeBron left Miami, my buddy saw when he had the car carrier come. He was like, no, those things carry like 6 cars. He's gone. If it had turned out that he was gone, I wanted to know why they bought the Christmas tree in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, they had to know it was coming. It kind of looks like an artificial fake tree. And, I mean, you can't be throwing fake trees out in the yard. That's not how we do things. But it kind of, when you look at it, it looks like he might have just thrown a fake tree out in the yard, just as a symbol.
We're going to talk to Corey Clark of the Tallahassee Democrat here on The Right Time. So why do you think Jimbo decided to leave? This sort of thing is fairly unprecedented.
Yeah, man, and I talk to a lot of people that aren't really inside the vacuum. That's the question. It's like, how do you leave Florida State for Texas A&M? I mean, I know A&M's got a lot of money and great facilities, but they hadn't won a national championship since The Wizard of Oz was out in theaters, like literally 1939. So Jimbo's always complained about things here behind the scenes, whether it was the boosters, whether it was the facilities, the infrastructure, and they gave him pretty much everything he ever asked for. Now, sometimes he had to ask not so politely, but he always ended up getting what he wanted. And I think this time he had something else he was asking for, and they're just like, we're not doing this anymore. You can't do this to us every year, so they didn't up their ante to what A&M was offering, or even close, and I think at that time he just took off.
Well, is this also a matter of how can you walk away from $7.5 million a year?
Well, I mean, look, it's easy for me to say you should stay and be loyal. I mean, $75 million over 10 years, that's real. That's a lot of money to just kind of shrug your shoulders at. At the same time, now he wasn't getting on. They weren't getting him on the cheap down here. I mean, he had a $40 million buyout, $44 million when he signed it. So they had put a lot of money in him, and I think at that point it's like, for Florida State's perspective, anyway, it's like, okay, how do we give a guy a raise that just went 5-6? That kind of sets a bad precedent too, where you're just going to have to give him more and more every offseason is the way it was looking, or he was going to go to an SEC West school.
All right, we're talking to Corey Clark of the Tallahassee Democrat here on The Right Time. Now, how do fans remember the time of Jimbo Fisher being there? Because at once he's the guy that followed the legend, but he actually won a national championship, but it was an inconsistent tenure. Yeah,
it was. He had the great, unbelievable team of 2013, which will go down as one of the best in college football history. And nice, obviously an undefeated season in 14, a pretty good season in 12. And other than that, other than the Jameis Winston years, it was good but not great. And I think that's how he's going to be perceived. But also, as soon as the sting of this wears off and the bitterness because the way the last week was handled was really ugly. But once that wears off, I think they're going to really appreciate what he did, if they don't already, because, I mean, it was really struggling in 07, 08, and 09. I wrote about it today. Gary Danielson, he called Tim Tebow's senior day against Florida State, said it was like the JV versus the varsity. Compare Florida State to the JV team. Well, Jimbo flipped that real quick, and they won 7 out of 8 against Florida. He won 7 out of 8 against Miami. So when you go 14-2 against those two in-state rivals, either if they're down or not, that's a big deal. And I think over time it's going to be remembered very fondly and favorably. It's just it was a really ugly exit.
All right, on to Corey Clark of the Tallahassee Democrat here on The Right Time. Now we've got the question of where they are going to go next with their head coaching search. What are you hearing down on the ground?
Well, I think everybody's hearing it that Willie Taggart at Oregon is the number one priority. Obviously, he's shown he can recruit in Florida. He's shown he can build a program in Florida. And when he's been out at Oregon and he's had his starting quarterback, that offense has been dynamic. So I think that's really exciting. After that, I mean, it's you hear Fuente from Virginia Tech. The thing about Florida State, and I think what lends itself to the fans being so frustrated these last 3 years, is it felt like their head coach didn't appreciate being here. That he was always using it for leverage, and he was tolerating being here. Well, Florida State's a destination job. Part of that's because Jimbo made it one again, but also just the tradition and history and everything else. The facilities are nice. They're getting better. So, I mean, they can have their pick of almost anyone in the country. I mean, there's maybe 15 or 20 schools that might have a head coach that would say no. You got to figure everybody else is in play if they want to go. But I would say Taggart's number one with a bullet, and he's obviously, I think, the biggest target in their eyes.
Now, our guy Mark Schlabach has reported that Stan Wilcox, the athletic director, wants to hire a minority head coach. Have you heard anything like that in Tallahassee?
I have not. No, I haven't. I think, honestly, he wants to hire the best coach, and it happens to be a minority at this time. That's my feeling. I've talked to Stan on the record and off the record, and that's never been brought up to me as a hiring a hiring aspect. It just so happens that Taggart's the best choice. I don't think if Taggart says no, that he immediately goes to another minority candidate. I think you can't do that. You just go to the best candidate. It so happens, in my mind, that the best candidate right now is the guy at Oregon.
Now, this is an awkward thing because college football and hiring of coaches, race has always been an issue. It's kind of hard to avoid. Is Florida State a place that's ready for a black head coach?
Yeah, I mean, they have a black AD, and they have a black basketball. Leonard Hamilton's been here for 15 years. Heck, they're going to have a black head coach tomorrow with Odell Higgins. And if you knew the reaction of Florida State fans getting to see Odell Higgins be the head coach tomorrow, because he's been here for 30 years. He played with Deion Sanders. He's been coaching here for 20 years. No, I think Florida State fans would be more than happy with one. I don't think that. I really don't. Maybe I'm being naive, but I don't think that would be an issue at all.
All right, we're talking to Corey Clark of the Tallahassee Democrat here on The Right Time. Now, we talked a little bit, you talked about this being a job that maybe only 15 other guys would pass up. Are you surprised, though, with Jimbo Fisher passing up LSU last year and then winding up at Texas A&M?
I mean, right, when you think about it, if you're going to leave Florida State, isn't that the play to make? I mean, he coached there. He knows you can win national championships there. That's happened since they've invented color TV. So we know you can win national championships at LSU. So, yes, I am. I think, I don't know if he tried to use this again for leverage because he really wanted to stay at Florida State, but he thought they needed to up what they were doing, or if he really just is looking for something fresh. Last year, again, the last 2 years when LSU came calling, he was coaching Dalvin Cook, and he had 10-win seasons. Well, this year he had 6 losses, and he's losing a lot of really good players. So maybe that has something to do with it, too. And he was also going to have to fire assistant coaches. That was definitely on the table, and that's not something he had to do the last 2 years. So all that kind of ties into it. Maybe it was just easier for him to make a clean break and go elsewhere. But, yes, if I'm Jimbo Fisher, man, if I could have been coach out of the 3 places, Tallahassee, Baton Rouge, or College Station, how do you end up in College Station? Well, sorry, $75 million is a big part of that.
Talking to Corey Clark, the Tallahassee Democrat, here on The Right Time. Last question before we go, talking about this thing with Willie Taggart, is it possible that this could wind up being kind of like Mark Richt leaving Georgia and going to Miami, and a move that works out great for everybody?
Man, I think so. And it's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a Seminole fan who was talking about how if Jimbo did come back at this point, he was going to be disappointed. Florida State fans had kind of soured on him a little bit. The program obviously wasn't good this year. The offense is kind of boring. It's been boring. It hasn't been great since Jameis left, and they're wondering it's trending in the wrong direction. So I think they just need. I think Florida State fans are genuinely excited about the prospect of something fresh and different, while also appreciating what Jimbo did, because Jimbo accomplished a great deal, and again gave them one of the all-time best college football teams in history. But I think everybody's looking for a fresh start. I think it could be good for Texas A&M, and I really think it could be good for Florida State, depending on who they bring in.
Now, what you are going to miss, though, is having a head coach named Jimbo, because there's something fun about just referring to him as Jimbo.
In every column, I would catch myself. Usually you write the last name of whoever you're quoting. But in my columns, I would always just quote him as Jimbo. It's fun to write. It's fun to say. And, yeah, now he's off in College Station.
All right, that is Corey Clark. Check him out at the Tallahassee Democrat covering Florida State sports. Thanks so much, my man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bomani. I appreciate it, bud.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
So right after we got done with the show yesterday, we had talked about this thing with Malcolm Jenkins and the Players Coalition and everything else. And Malcolm Jenkins said that he's no longer going to protest. No. He said he is no longer going to protest. And then both he and Anquan Bolden made it clear that they said that any agreement that was struck with the Players Coalition and the NFL was not going to be a simple quid pro quo. It was not going to be, we have an agreement, now you guys don't protest anymore. But Malcolm Jenkins sure said that he just magically at that time decided that he didn't want to do it anymore. And here's what he said. He said, I know a lot of people have made a big deal about the money that the league has proposed, but I'm more concerned and more interested in the platform they're proposing. The reason I started raising my fist in the first place is draw awareness to injustices in this country, disenfranchised people of color. I wanted to draw awareness. And so I think what the league is proposing is a platform and a campaign similar to what they've done with breast cancer awareness. My cause, my cleats, salute to service, but hopefully in an even bigger manner. And I understand the argument that he makes that if I get more out of this if these things do more than the actual raising of a fist or something like that, it's a fair trade. I'm not mad at that, and I don't have a problem with the notion of a trade in that circumstance. The bottom line is, if you decide to boycott a company, for example, they do what you want, you then go back and patronize that company again. Our morality is intertwined with our capitalism in this society. It becomes very, very difficult to separate the two. And so if people who only seem to care about money put the thing that they care about behind what you're talking about, I can understand why you would make the decision that you would change your approach. Now, after the show was done, though, we got this interview with Slate from Eric Reed, and Eric Reed was just like, yo, flex bombs. I have flex bombs all around. Long and the short, Eric Reed seems to be indicating that this Players Coalition has, is 40 guys, but Malcolm Jenkins and Anquan Bolden are at the top, and they're having calls with the dudes from the league that not everyone else is on. And what seems unclear is whether or not the other guys who are in the coalition really have any idea what's going on. I talked to a dude yesterday that's part of the Players Coalition on the group text and everything else, and his response was, someone is lying. But I found it very telling that he didn't know who the person was that was lying, that these guys in this group don't necessarily know who within it is telling the truth and how much they can trust the guys that are at the top of it, right? So Michael Thomas, who plays for the Dolphins, he says he's backing out of the coalition. Russell Okung says he's backing out of the coalition along with Eric Reed. Now, this is something that Eric Reed said that I thought was interesting. Two things. One thing he said is that he thinks that Roger Goodell wants to have this whole thing wrapped up by, I believe the date was December 13th. And he said the reason that he believes that Goodell wants to have this wrapped up by then is because they're going to have a meeting about his contract extension, and he wants to get this thing out of the way, right? That's what he wants. He wants this thing to be out of the way under those, when it's time to talk about him getting his money. But the other thing that Reed talked about when he got into this, and he's looking at everything that's going on with the situation, what this thing's going to be with the protest, he said that someone from the league came to him and said, if we give you guys this money, will you stop protesting? Now, Eric, what's his name? Malcolm Jenkins is saying that there is no quid pro quo on this one. Anquan Bolden is saying that there is no quid pro quo on this one. But Jenkins and Bolden need to understand where they look bad in this situation. Bolden looked bad in this because as this is going on, Bolden is trying to get back in the league. Like, he retired at the beginning of this season, but Bolden is trying to get back in the league. So how would it look if this deal was struck and then suddenly somebody gave a job to Anquan Bolden? Right. That right there would not look very good, now would it? How does it look on Malcolm Jenkins' part? If Malcolm Jenkins is the guy that's at the front of this and it turns out that he's having meetings and saying things that the other guys in the coalition do not know, and then he decides in it all on his own, you know what, I'm not going to raise my fist anymore. It does then sound to people like he made a trade. And look, that's a trade that he can decide to make, except for the fact that he only has so much latitude to make decisions for the other guys. Now, the guys in his coalition, you can't expect them to all agree. It's 40 people. You can't expect them to all be friends. It's 40 people. You can't expect them to all get along. It's 40 people. They are going to have their internal issues with these things, just as the owners probably have their own internal issues about these things. But the dude at the front of the movement can't look like police. And the way that Malcolm Jenkins has comported himself, from what we can tell, if Eric Reed is to be trusted, is that he acting like he got a wire on. Basically, that he going back telling them what it is, and then everything goes around from there. That's where this whole thing is right now. The owners just want this to stop. I totally understand that. The owners just want this to stop. The owners don't care what the bottom line on the issue is. The owners just want this to stop. So I did First Take this morning, and Stephen A. Smith was saying if you're Malcolm Jenkins, then you cannot be concerned with what other people think about you in this circumstance. If they disagree with you, then you just got to go ahead and keep on trucking with what you're doing. And my point for Stephen A. was, you're right. You can't be bogged down by the fact that some people are going to disagree with you. But if people question your intentions, then you got to fix that. Right? Because if in theory you are doing something that is ultimately selfless and supposed to be for other people, the second that you look like you are being co-opted by the owners, you become useless. Remember this. I've said that I don't think the owners care about these issues. I don't think that they're concerned with those. And people have said to me, why is it that how can I be so sure the owners don't care? I can tell you how you can be so sure the owners don't care. Because if the owners cared, this wouldn't be a negotiation between the players and the owners. This would be a collaboration. They would all be getting together and saying, hey, this is something we all care about. What's the best way that we can show how much we care? It's not what the owners are going for. The owners are going for, hey, man, what can we do to get y'all to start, get y'all's back straight during this national anthem? There is no need to negotiate with people with whom you agree. You negotiate with adversaries. You negotiate with people who are on the other side. And this is absolutely a negotiation, and the owners or players are absolutely on the other side, on oppositional sides. Now, the owners have tried to get a little mix of people who are on the, you got Shad Khan there. He's not so happy with Trump right now. Stephen Ross, I think, has been one of the guys that's been involved with this. He works with black kids. He's big. He got a charity. Whole thing. He seemed to be down. They also got Bidwell and Bob McNair and these guys that have been showing up to these meetings also to give a representative sample of what the ownership base is. If the owners as a unit cared, this would not be a negotiation. This would be a collaboration. Do you think this is a collaboration? Does this sound to you like it's a collaboration? Does it sound to you like the players think that it's a collaboration? No. This is owners on one side. This is labor on the other side. And if you, Malcolm Jenkins, look like you are on the side of management when you're supposed to be representing labor, whoo, buddy, everything you're trying to do can very easily go up in smoke.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Check him out at presnapreads.com. Also, the Nickel Package Podcast. In studio in scenic Bristol, Connecticut. His name is Cian Fahey. Cian, is Bristol everything you imagine?
Besides the headphones, maybe, yeah.
We're talking to Cian Fahey, presnapreads.com, here on The Right Time. All right, so last night we had Dak Prescott playing with a busted hand. He didn't look so good there, but I think a lot of people get on you a lot about saying that you take Carson Wentz over Dak Prescott. Take Dak Prescott over Carson Wentz. Are you still in that same category after the year's played out?
Yeah, I tend not to overreact over a couple of weeks, and I don't think Dak has been the major issue. He had a couple of bad games, obviously, some clearly bad games. The Chargers game, it kind of got out of hand. I think there's something more interesting to it there, though, than just talking about Dak versus Wentz. Like we've kind of focused on Zeke's departure and his suspension and his impact on the offense. But if you kind of look at what happened last night with the running game, Alfred Morris was still pretty good. Rod Smith was pretty good as well. And it's because that offensive line is getting back healthy. Like Tyron Smith, he had one block last night where he absolutely dominated someone and just threw them on the ground and stood over them, basically laughing at him. And then you saw Zach Martin was healthy. He had a concussion last week. Lyle Collins was getting back to full health with back issues. And their left guard spot is still a bit of an issue, but Travis Frederickson playing better as well yesterday. I think the offensive line was the big issue there, and I know this is always going to be something that comes back to the quarterbacks, but that's just the way we do it. But that offense was built to run the ball and then throw off of the run. And when they were limited running the ball, it kind of put a guy like Terrence Williams into a position to be a possession receiver, something he's not capable of doing. Sure, Dak could play better, and actually, the interesting thing now, I only kind of thought of it after the game last night. Last year, around this time of the season, Dak had a little bit of a slump as well when he played the Giants for the first time. So this might be something that he kind of have to look out for with him. Does he just slump after a couple of months of the year?
Now, as you talk about the offensive line getting healthy, so are they a line that if they get healthier, that Alfred Morris can be good enough to get them through this suspension?
They can be, but we also have to realize that this offensive line is not the one that they had last year. Ronald Leary and Doug Free are both gone from the line, and obviously they're not the names. Guys like Tyron Smith and Travis Frederick and Zach Martin are the names, but those were two key pieces. That depth they had when Lyle Collins got hurt last year. Leary is a quality starter. He's in Denver now. Doug Free was a really controversial guy in Dallas, but it was like when you play next to 4 first-round picks and you're not a great player, you're not a physically talented player, you're not going to be getting celebrated. You're going to get more criticism than you deserve. And they've kind of found out this year that Doug Free was better than they realised, I think, because Lyle Collins has struggled a little bit more at right tackle. He's a run blocker, really. He's not a great pass blocker, although he held up pretty well against Ryan Kerrigan last night, so maybe that's a sign of his health and a little bit of development. I'm not hugely concerned about the Cowboys, and I think like their record, the way they are at the moment, that's probably going to hurt them and probably keep them out of the playoffs. But I also said that about the Chargers a month ago, and the Chargers right now are 1 game back, so you probably shouldn't listen to me.
We're talking to Cian Fahey, presnapreads.com, here on The Right Time. Now, Shannon's Giants decided that Eli Manning did not need to be their starting quarterback anymore. How much can you tell about what his play has been this year, given how bad everything is around him?
You know, my favourite part of being a Bristol is me seeing Shannon's soul just jump out of his body when he heard the mention of the Giants. He's sitting in the corner shaking his head with his hand in his face. I completely missed your question just because I was laughing at Shannon. But I think the Eli benching is a little bit harsh, but I kind of understand it too, because like the season's over there. They've got nothing to move forward with. You could argue that Geno Smith starting doesn't really make sense, and it should be the younger guy, that Davis Webb, who they've got there. But Eli in general to me is kind of funny, because I see a lot of people talk about how he gets overrated, but I don't really see the people who are actually rating him. So maybe that's my bubble or whatever. But I've always found Eli to be underrated because he's played in that Kevin Gilbride offense where he's always just pushed the ball downfield. He's always had to play under pressure and thrown to tight windows. And when McAdoo became the offensive coordinator, it changed the whole style. And that worked for a while. But the big mistake there, and it's been a mistake in Tampa Bay as well, I think, with Dirk Cutter, where they forced their offensive coordinator into a head coach role just to try and hold on to him, and he wasn't that important. They didn't have to keep Tom Coughlin, though, but they did have to go and get someone who kind of knew what they were doing, and I don't think McAdoo knows what he's doing.
All right, talking to Cian Fahey, Nickel Package Podcast here on The Right Time. Now, we got the Vikings and Falcons this week. You wrote an article on Case Keenum. What have you had to say about his play this year? Because he has exceeded expectation, if nothing else.
I think he had his 2 best games of the season in the last couple of weeks, and hopefully for the Vikings' sake that continues. And he threw a touchdown to Kyle Rudolph on a corner route against pressure that was phenomenal. It was probably his best play of the season. But overall, he's largely still been Case Keenum. He's still throwing the ball to defenders all the time. He's still missing easy throws. He still moves himself into pressure too often. But that's the quality of that Vikings supporting cast. Now there, if you want to talk about offensive line play, that's a unit in Minnesota that is a serious upgrade on last year. Last year, they used to destroy every play they tried to run. This year, it's a versatile unit. It's very effective. They got Riley Reef at left tackle, who's phenomenal in pass protection this year, and they've got Pat Elflein at centre, who's completely diversified their offense. I think it works right now, and I can understand why they're kind of riding with Keenum, but I think you can see that implosion game coming too. He's had 3 games this year with at least 3 interceptable passes. He's had 2 with 4. One of them was against Washington, where he threw the ball to DJ Swearinger twice in a row on 2 snaps, and that brought Washington back into that game. I'm concerned about the impending implosion, but I think I can understand as well why it's difficult to bench him.
All right, Tony Key and Fahey here, presnapbreeze.com here on the Right Time. Now, we've got Panthers and Saints coming up on Sunday afternoon. What's been different with the Panthers offense since the Kelvin Benjamin trade?
Speed. It's all about speed. When you have Devin Funchess and Kelvin Benjamin outside, you've got 2 guys who you have to kind of carry a little bit. Now, Funchess has had a good year. He's been effective, but he's not a diverse player. He's not someone who's going to make plays after the catch. He's not going to take the top off the defense for the old cliche there. But you have when you have 2 of those guys, it's very hard to call an effective passing game. It's very hard to be diverse. Like we just talked about with the Vikings. Like compare them to the Vikings with Thielen and Diggs. Those guys can run any route. They can get open at any level. They can adjust at the catch point. They can make plays after the catch. When you've got Benjamin and you've got Funchess across from him, you've basically got 2 guys who have to win at the catch point and make tight contested catches all the time. And that's not really a way to build an offense. And once they got Benjamin out of there, it's really opened up everything. Christian McCaffrey's usage out of the backfield, moving him outside, even on running plays, they're using better running plays with McCaffrey now, and the whole offense just looks a lot better. Actually, my concern there, weirdly, because it's been the total opposite for the past few years, my concern there is Cam, because Cam is the least consistent player in the NFL this year.
Like, how wild has the variance been on his play?
There's been games this year where McCaffrey, I think he's cost McCaffrey maybe 5 touchdowns this year. Like, there's some plays where McCaffrey's been wide open 5 yards downfield in the flat after making an unbelievable double move to make a linebacker fall over, make him miss, and Cam will just airmail the ball 10 yards over his head. And it was happening at the start of the season, and it's also something people have said about Cam over the course of his career, but I've always felt it's been overstated. This year, it's really felt real. It's felt like his accuracy issues are there, and maybe it's part of the shoulder, but we're at the point in the season now where we shouldn't be talking about his shoulder injury from before the year. At this stage, he should be healthy, and at this stage, he should be playing better than he is. And it's such a weird position to be in, because Cam has been carrying those teams with Ted Ginn and Corey Brown and a bunch of random players that no one really knows.
All right, Tony King and Fahey, presnapbreeze.com. All right, we got the upside matchup of the week. The Eagles' defensive line against the Seahawks' offensive line. What do you see there?
Oof. This is like the best defensive line maybe, but besides the Vikings in football, going against probably the worst offensive line with Jermaine Ifedi. Like the Seahawks traded for Dwayne Brown, and Dwayne Brown's a really good player, but he's an old player, and he's not someone who's going to completely alter the identity of the offensive line, and that line has just been decimated over and over and over again this year. It's gotten a little bit better as the season has gone on, but this Eagles unit, you've got a first-round pick there in Derek Barnett who gets snaps, but he's only a rotation player, and that's not because of him being a rookie or him needing to learn the defense or anything like that. It's just the quality of the pass rushers they have, the quality of the depth they have. Fletcher Cox is an absolute monster, and he should be on Russell Wilson all day.
All right, that is Key and Fahey. Check them out, presnapbreeze.com. Also, the Nickel Package Podcast. Enjoy the States, man. Glad to have you here.
Thanks, man.
All right, now, get a better business travel experience and a free pair of Bose SoundLink wireless headphones for trying Upside.com this holiday season. Just use code Bomani at Upside.com. You deserve a better business trip. Minimum purchase required. See site for complete details.
Thanks for listening to The Right Time Podcast. Please come back Monday for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio.